They have literally learned nothing. Nothing. The establishment media are at it again, now openly attacking President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet picks with salacious and unverified misinformation in an apparent campaign they are waging to try to sink the president-elect's incoming administration. Meanwhile, the sitting and outgoing president of the United States, Joe Biden, just issued what amounts to one of the most controversial pardons in American history on Sunday evening when he pardoned his son, Hunter Biden. Biden's complete and unconditional pardon of his son spans more than a decade and is more expansive than Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon after the Watergate scandal. Yet again, what are the establishment media focused on? Well, the supposedly respected and revered New York Times and New Yorker are leading a campaign to try to tank Pete Hegseth's appointment by Trump to be the Secretary of Defense in his incoming administration, while Cannon's deep state stooges are going ballistic over attorney Kash Patel, Trump's pick to run the FBI. Others are attacking his nominee for Director of National Intelligence, former Rep. Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, a former Democrat who left the party and joined the GOP this year when she endorsed Trump over nonsensical claims that she is somehow a Russian agent. Obviously, all of these smears are dubious at best, and frankly many of them are being spread by the very same people who spread fake attacks repeatedly on Trump for a decade, and also importantly by people who covered for the deep state and Democrats, including Biden during this same time frame. How did the media industry get so far off on the wrong track, and does anything they say even matter anymore? What are the origins of this fact-free information warfare? Why are they waging it? What's their endgame? On whose behalf are they doing it? Will they ever change? Let's start with delving into what should be the biggest story in American politics by far. Biden pardoning his son Hunter after repeatedly lying to the country and telling everyone for years he would not do exactly what he just did is a massive scandal. The pardon is expansive and will take months, if not years, to fully investigate, but some things are abundantly clear from the outset. The president's actions shield not just his son, but himself as well from scrutiny. This pardon covers a span dating back to January 2014, when Biden was vice president of the United States and his son was working for the natural gas company Burisma in Ukraine. Biden, of course, threatened to withhold aid to the Ukrainians if they did not fire a government prosecutor who was investigating his son's employer. Well, the pardon of Hunter Biden by his father, the president ensures that there will be no criminal consequences for that whole fiasco if there were ever going to be any to begin with. There are plausible legal arguments in favor or against the pardon. In favor of it, former Biden family press aide Michael LaRosa offered a justification in an interview with The Hill by saying he thinks the various cases against Hunter Biden on the tax and gun issues were weak, and that legally, the pardon makes sense. Okay, fine, even if you agree with that argument. But certainly, if you do not, you cannot miss the fact that what appears to be the first ever presidential pardon of a family member this close to the sitting president of the United States is hugely politically controversial, at best, Democrats long-term. Even LaRosa understands the political problems of this, and particularly the quagmire Biden forced them into by repeatedly lying to the country and claiming that he would not, under any circumstances, do what he just did. But then we cross into the theater of the absurd when we look at how some others are framing it. What does the New York Times' top columnist, Ezra Klein, have to say about the pardon? Well, he blames Trump for it. What? Wow! Seriously, how is Biden issuing a more expansive pardon than Ford's Nixon pardon post-Watergate to his own son even remotely possibly Trump's fault? Regardless of that ridiculous argument, there are at least a million follow-up questions that need to be asked of Biden and his White House. First off, is he done pardoning family members? Does he intend to pardon himself? How about his brothers and sister? What about other family members? What about administration officials like his cabinet members or White House staff? Biden, for good measure, issued the pardon moments before he hopped on Air Force One to jet overseas for what is likely his last foreign trip as president off to Angola, ensuring he will not be in the spotlight here at home. On this, in the days immediately following the highly controversial move, there are no White House press briefings for several days either, and White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, one of the least honest people to ever hold the job, will not have to face cameras for some time on this. To their credit, some Democrats like Colorado Gov, Jared Polis and Rep. Greg Stanton-Tiaz did publicly criticize Biden's move immediately since Sunday night with those statements. Other Democrats have joined the party late. Per Axios, other members like Reps. Jared Golden Beesgay and Marie Glusenkamp Perez have joined in criticizing it. Several other Democrats have joined in on the chorus, criticizing Biden too bad, but former Attorney General Eric Hodler, the right-hand man of former President Barack Obama, whom Biden served as vice president and whose administration some of the Hunter Biden pardoned activities like the aforementioned Ukraine shenanigans happened during, was out actually defending the pardon. It's no surprise to see Hodler, who was voted into criminal and civil contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with lawfully issued congressional subpoenas over the Operation Fast and Furious gun-walking scandal that led to the murder of a U.S. Border Patrol agent named Brian Terry, show such a disregard for the rule of law. But again, this perverted vision of justice and law and order that most of the Democratic Party has embraced in the modern era, a vision that Americans have rejected at the ballot box multiple times, including most recently less than a month ago, when they sent Trump back to the White House, does seem begun with Hodler during his time as Attorney General during the Obama administration. Regardless of Hodler's nonsensical argument attempting to justify this egregious action by Biden, this pardon of Hunter Biden is absolutely one of the most damning political indictments of Democrats as a party and could have serious long-term damaging consequences for them. Nate Silver, the statistician and polling analyst whose modeling every election cycle aims to capture the picture of the electorate, sounded off furiously about the pardon on Sunday evening, noting that, while he voted for Vice President Kamala Harris against Trump in the November election, that nobody should ever vote for any Democrat who does not condemn Biden's pardon of his son. This decision by Biden to pardon his son is both shockingly egregious and completely unsurprising. Of course, in hindsight, the president was without question going to do this, and of course, he, the White House, and the Democrats were going to absolutely lie about it until he did it. But the fact of the matter is the move is so over the top, even though expected, that it deserves major scrutiny of how the nation got here. First off, back when stories about Hunter Biden first surfaced like the New York Post original report on his laptop from hell, deep state actors from the so-called intelligence community circulated a letter calling it disinformation. Then later, when that collapsed and Hunter Biden was charged and then convicted of several crimes, despite a last-second plea deal attempt that collapsed with the slightest bit of scrutiny from a federal judge, the establishment media went all in, lies from Biden and the White House that Biden would not pardon his son. None of these people has shown even the slightest bit of remorse for their actions in this. All of them, at least as far as we can tell, right now, think they did nothing wrong. In fact, some of them even as recently as Monday morning, when asked by Breitbart News if they had any remorse for their actions, got extremely defensive and claimed they were just reporting what the president said at the time. Others, like CNN's Ellie Honig, are putting the blame on Biden, saying that he lied to the country for a long time about this. The deeper issues with America's law enforcement and intelligence agencies date back much further than Biden's presidency, to be fair, but he and his inner circle have not only done nothing about fixing them, they have actually very much exacerbated them. The FBI, Justice Department, CIA, and NSA, and many others in the intelligence and federal law enforcement apparatus broadly. The deep state have issues that date back to even long before Obama ascended the presidency in 2008. There were Ruby Ridge and the Waco siege back in the early 1990s. Sure, but things really seem to have intensified when Obama was elected, and when he picked Hodler as his Attorney General. Hodler, by almost every account, was by far the most partisan Attorney General in modern history. He gladly bore the informal title of Obama's wingman, and he regularly engaged in highly partisan activity atop the Justice Department. In fact, emails uncovered thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA showed that Hodler's staff regularly colluded with George Soros-funded Media Matters for America to smear conservatives, including journalists like specifically me when I worked for Daily Caller more than 12 years ago. The Justice Department under Hodler lied about this for years, and then finally released the records years later. That was the beginning of the weaponization as it's been seen in modern times. And since then, after Trump's first term in office, when Biden rose to power, we've seen his Attorney General, Merrick Garland, and specifically Garland's deputy Lisa Monaco, who Trump told Breitbart News recently is clearly really running things over there at Main Justice, refine the tactics first deployed by Hodler to include actual law enforcement actions against conservatives like the January 6 protesters and pro-life activists, among others. That doesn't even get into what the Biden Doge did to Trump himself. They charged Trump with ridiculous allegations of federal crimes charges. They have now dropped post-election, essentially an admission the case was purely political from the get-go, and they had the FBI raid his home at Mar-a-Lago. Think about that for a minute. Joe Biden's Justice Department and FBI raided the personal home of his chief political rival on obviously ridiculous charges that they now admit were purely political since they are no longer pursuing the cases. Perhaps that's why seeing Hodler's comments on the Hunter Biden pardon is so fascinating, and it brings us to the next major point to focus on here as Trump assembles a government to take over after his inauguration on Jan 20, 2025. In literally the exact same social media post as the one in which Hodler defends the Hunter Biden pardon, he then proceeds to attack Trump's pick of Patel to lead the FBI. Why does Hodler not want Patel at the FBI? Is it because Patel will actually bring some real reforms to the Bureau that may uncover some nasty and gnarly things Hodler himself or his goons did when he was in power? Hodler asks a rhetorical question in that post defending the Hunter Biden pardon, which is whether Patel is qualified to lead the FBI. Then answers his own question by saying hell no. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe sounded off on CNN literally within seconds of Patel's appointment announcement too, with the same argument. Hodler and McCabe and everyone else ripping him are ignoring Patel's impeccable credentials. Patel was a senior attorney on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence (CPC). He was the Pentagon Chief of Staff. He was a senior advisor to the Director of National Intelligence. He served as a top counterterrorism advisor on the National Security Council in the White House during Trump's first term, literally helping plan the counter-terrorist actions against people like ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, where Trump ordered his assassination, and once and for all ended ISIS after the Obama-era geniuses who ran the military and intelligence communities said ISIS could never be defeated. Patel had an illustrious career before that as a federal prosecutor. Yes, he prosecuted more cases than Kamala Harris did, and even won an award from the very same Obama-era dodgy that Hodler led for his successful prosecution of terrorists. In other words, Patel is absolutely eminently qualified to serve as FBI director, and anyone who argues otherwise like Hodler or McCabe is lying. That begs the question, why are they lying? What it is about Patel they hate so much that they would blow their own credibility in a desperate mad dash to stop him? Well, it's probably that Patel is going to actually reform the way things work at the FBI if confirmed. And that change is coming to the Bureau at long last. What would that mean for people like McCabe and Hodler? What would it mean for the establishment media figures who have worked closely with people like them for the last decade or longer? Well, beyond an ideological shift from the left to the right, people like Patel getting confirmed into positions like FBI director means serious institutional change that could threaten the very livelihoods of those who have made careers out of things generally staying the way they long have been at these places. In other words, no, it's not that these folks are engaged in widespread criminality, that the FBI is all of a sudden going to uncover if Patel is confirmed and calling the shots over there, though there certainly might be some of that. It's more that the drastic changes to the way things have long been shifts power and control away from the failed people of the past toward a different and new future. And that change is scary to powerful people who pull down hefty salaries and have built lives around what they're doing. A similar type of scenario exists with Hegseth. No part of the federal government is swampier than the Department of Defense, and the Pentagon blows through cash like newborn babies blow through diapers, since he's not part of the current Pentagon leadership structure of generals and political officials from which presidents usually pick secretaries of defense. Hegseth represents a major institutional shift away from the ways of the past toward serious change, as Trump's other allies over at the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency DOGE, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have already made clear DOGE is very likely to focus on Pentagon waste. That makes insiders who currently control the levers of power and buy the flow of cash very uneasy. So cue the media attacks as the New York Times dug up Hegseth's divorce records to uncover a deeply personal from his mother one she retracted almost immediately as Breitbart News reported to smear Hegseth. A New Yorker followed suit with a suspect report on Hegseth written a decade ago before he even worked at Fox News back when he was running a veterans group. The media is likely to continue these attacks all the way until either Hegseth is confirmed or not. The New Yorker's Jane Mayer ironically calls Breitbart News a mouthpiece for Trump, yet she in her story reveals she was actually whipping Senate votes against Hegseth because she quotes seen Richard Blumenthal, DCT, as reacting to the terrible character assassination of Hegseth contained within her piece. Iber was upset that Breitbart News preempted her piece with one of our own, thereby taking the sting out of her reporting. Then, of course, there are other Trump picks like Gabbard and RFK who are also under fire. and the anti-Trump forces already got former Matt Gaetz AFT withdraw as Trump's pick for Attorney General. Trump has since replaced him with former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's likely to sail to confirmation. So they are clearly on the hunt for as many scalps as they can get. The question really becomes whether Republicans in the Senate fall for it again, or if they reject the smear campaigns of these increasingly desperate leftists and media figures like they did when they confirmed Justice Brett Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Letting the world know that he will not wipe away the decision of 12 of his son's peers.
Was asked directly, and he has said he wouldn't pardon his son if he gets convicted.
Let's wait and see what happens if he loses.
Yeah, but he said it.
He's going to get pardoned by his dad. There's no question about that.
The president has ruled out pardoning his son.
Major commitment from the president, accepting the outcome of the trial and also pledging not to pardon his son.
So the challenge for him is really to continue to live up to his values when it was really personal, and he did that today.
It seems like a pretty normal, straightforward answer, but it takes new weight when we see what Trump is saying about the outcome of his trial, what we're hearing from other Republicans who say they don't accept the jury's verdict here in New York.
The contrast is profound. To sit there and say, well, I'm not going to intervene in the legal process, and I wouldn't pardon my son. One side, Democrats and Joe Biden protecting the justice system. And on the other, Republicans and Trump protecting Trump.
Our current president of the United States has so much respect for the law that he has said he would not pardon his son. I mean, again, it's all about the contrast.
President Biden saying, I will respect whatever this jury decides, versus Donald Trump after he was convicted on 34 counts, saying the entire system is rigged against him.
Their latest attack has been that Joe Biden has politicized and weaponized the DOJ, right? That was the whole argument around Donald Trump's conviction. And this week, of course, Hunter Biden was found guilty, and Joe Biden has very clearly said he would not pardon his son, he would not commute his sentence. How stark is this difference? I mean, how can Republicans keep making this argument now that Joe Biden has really put it out there? Where's Hunter? And he stood there in a courtroom, flanked by his family, and he's accepted his sentence.
He is not pardoning his son, which he could do. These are federal charges. Right. He is not doing that. He is not doing it because he is living what it means to have a rule of law in this country. Yeah. And it isn't, I mean, if you want to know if he believes it, you could actually see what is happening with his own son.
The president, Anderson, has been really clear that he is going to accept the outcome of the trial no matter what happens.
So Joe Biden's gotten asked about, talking about law and order. He's gotten asked if he would pardon his son. He has said no. On the other side, you've got Donald Trump, who has said that he will pardon the January 6th insurrectionists. Yeah. They're not even his sons. They're just sons of bitches.
Washington said, I am not running again, because he understood the self-restraint was absolutely essential to this country, so you don't have a king. He did not pardon his son. He did not order the Department of Justice to say, don't prosecute my son. So impressive.
Could have ordered the Justice Department to halt the prosecution of Hunter Biden, according to this court. Everyone understands he's a decent man.
I think Joe Biden has a chance here to stand up for the rule of law, to say the law is the law, no matter who it is, no matter if it's Trump or Biden. And remember, part of Trumpism's dangerousness is that it tears down institutions, important institutions of our democracy. So there is an opportunity here for Biden to say, the jury found him guilty. This is how it's supposed to work. Period, paragraph, end of story.
Have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes. As I said last week, I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal. The president said he won't touch it. He said he's not going to pardon his son. And it seems that Merrick Garland let it go through. How can the Justice Department be weaponized against Trump when all of that is happening?
Democrats stand for the rule of law. Remember, law and order. And we've been saying that Trump's not above the law. Hunter Biden's not above the law. No one is above the law. And it is amazing to see the stark contrast between how Democrats handled today and how Republicans handled this whole thing over the last couple of weeks.
For years, these conservatives have been crowing about a politicized Justice Department, Biden politicizing it, and so on. What happened today? The Justice Department convicted the president's own son, his only living son. You heard the president say he would accept the outcome of the case. I know no other word for that but presidential.
He even went so far as to say he wouldn't pardon his son. That's how much respect he has for the system.
The president has said that he will not pardon his son. What did you think of that?
I thought it was extraordinary. I mean, it was a moment of just moral clarity on the part of Joe Biden, and couldn't have been in starker contrast to the way Donald Trump has handled his own conviction.
He could still pardon him. He said he won't do that. All of that conduct, given that it's his son, is kind of, we should pause for a moment and think about how unbelievable that is. In a million years, if the shoe were on the other foot and Donald Trump was facing the prospect of his son being prosecuted by a Biden, me, if I had been held over, a Biden holdover or Obama holdover prosecutor, not in a million years would that have happened. So, some of the people on the right, the people who support Donald Trump, are trying to cast this as some clever ops program.
Yeah. Hunter Biden was found guilty by a jury of his peers, just like Donald Trump, because this is our justice system at work. The divide here is stunning, and it's a great reminder that one political party remains committed to the rule of law and the other doesn't.
Joe Biden has already proven he's willing to stand up for the rule of law in a way that we could all never imagine Donald Trump to do.
Pretty emphatic over the last few days that he does not plan to pardon or commute his son. What that really is him saying is, I don't plan to use the powers of the office, the powers of the presidency, to provide private relief for my family. In a sense, he's staking out a pretty bright line between being, as he says, a president and a dad. And that's not just an emotional expression. He's in effect saying, I don't think that I don't have a right, even if it's legal, and God knows it must be tempting, to use this power in a way that is not available to so many other Americans facing similar kinds of struggles. There's a kind of old school sort of flinty core to his conception of how you are to be in the system, how you are to be as a person, a moral person, and ultimately how to contend with questions of power. One of the things that anybody who spends time around Joe Biden comes to know is that he's had this long-running focus on how much he is bothered by abuses of power.
Will accept the verdict no matter what it is, and that he has ruled out pardoning his own son. Contrast that from what we hear from Donald Trump. And again, we have to underline, in no uncertain terms, President Biden saying, I will accept the outcome. I will accept what the jury decides here. That's the way our legal system works. And no, I will not pardon my own son if he is convicted.
And the contrast is so clear in terms of decency and principle and transactional guidance in terms of how you view the world.
It is still a good day for the United States that this conviction is a prime example of the way our judicial system is supposed to work. Even President Biden saying in a statement that he would respect the outcome of this case. Those words so completely contrast with what his opponent, now a convicted felon himself, continues to say about the U.S. courts.
The contrast to how Trump has behaved, how Trump has treated the rule of law. This was a good day for the system, good day for sort of America as an example of how the rule of law should work.
President Biden told David Muir that he would absolutely accept the verdict, whatever it was, and that he would not pardon his son, regardless. And today he said the same thing in a statement. Meanwhile, Donald Trump comes out and calls the justice system completely unfair. What do you think of that contrast?
There's the contrast of two different men.
Here is Joe Biden, who has lost a son who served honorably in the armed forces, who now has basically said, I will sacrifice my surviving son's future. I will allow him to serve a prison term if that's what's determined, because that is what the rule of law demands.
The president announces that he will not pardon his son. Do you think ordinary Americans give enough thought to how this...
I want to read you something that the Democratic governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, posted about this. He's not okay with the move. He wrote in part, I'm disappointed that he put his family ahead of the country. This is a bad precedent that could be abused by later presidents and will sadly tarnish his reputation. Does this damage the justice system?
Well, I totally agree with the governor that this pardon will tarnish Joe Biden's
legacy. I mean, Joe Biden, let's be clear here, he lied to us for a long time. He said categorically, I will not pardon my son. He said, I will take it off the table. And he couched it in very high-minded terminology. I respect the Justice Department. I respect the jury's verdict. Well, now he's gone back on that. I don't know how many people actually believed him. I certainly didn't. There's tape of me saying there's no way he's going to make good on this. He's absolutely going to pardon Hunter Biden. But as to whether this tarnishes the justice system, I don't think I would go that far. I think this, like I said, will go down on the list of ignominious presidential pardons. But I don't think law students 50 or 100 years from now are going to look back at this as a horrific miscarriage of justice that undermines the foundation of our justice system. There is a reasonable argument that in some respects Hunter Biden was treated unfairly, and I think that will give Joe Biden some degree of cover here.
Andrew, I just want to start first with you and just get your reaction to this news tonight.
Yeah, well, it's a terrible development for the men and women of the FBI and also for the nation that depends on a highly functioning, professional, independent Federal Bureau of Investigation. The fact that Kash Patel is profoundly unqualified for this job is not even like a matter for debate. So I think what we should really be thinking about right now is what does this signal in terms of Donald Trump's intent for the FBI? The installation, or the nomination, I guess we should say at this point, of Kash Patel as FBI director can only possibly be a plan to disrupt, to dismantle, to distract the FBI, and to possibly use it as a tool for the president's political agenda. And, you know, as an organization, we know what that looks like. This country has been there before, right? The pre-Watergate FBI, the J. Edgar Hoover FBI, struck fear in the hearts of Americans across the spectrum of politicians, people in entertainment, people in the civil rights community, because the director operated at the direction of presidents to collect political intelligence and to utilize the legal authorities, the investigative authorities of the FBI to terrorize and intimidate Americans. So the question is that where we're going back to with this nomination? I would argue that Kash Patel would be the perfect person for Donald Trump to nominate if that's in fact his intent for the FBI.